What's up, guys? Intellitech Mobile here, and today we're going to be doing a multi-review. This not only will be the review of the Xbox Series X after 2 years of being on the market, it will also be a review of the Xbox Series X after 2 years of it being in my home. So, this is the Xbox Series X, flanked by two controllers, one of which is an Xbox One controller, which thankfully they do work on the Series X, although the Xbox Series X controller is better. It's good that you can save some money and have you use the nice controller while you give the crappy old Xbox One controllers to your friends when you're playing Modern Warfare 2. Or should I say friend, because you can only play with two people. So, at least I think. It's been a while since I played it because it's not that fun. So, this is the Xbox Series X. And despite what I just said about Modern Warfare 2's local multiplayer, its actual campaign and the normal online multiplayer is actually really nice. Although there are a lot of things I don't like about this game, mainly the fact there's literally nothing on the disc. It says requires content download. They're not joking, there's nothing on this disc. But at least you own the disc, even though it doesn't really do anything and it will be useless once the servers go down. But hey, whatever. That will be a separate conversation. For now, let's talk about the box itself, with these lovely little holes that you can stick your various fingers into, because they're very large holes. So, as far as the console itself, it's very heavy, and you can tell, despite it being a sort of matte black finish, it's not a textured finish, it's still a smooth finish. So it's like halfway between matte and glossy. It's not glossy, it's not shiny, but it's also not textured. So it's still a smooth finish, but it's a smooth, you know, not shiny finish, if that makes sense. So while it is a flat matte finish, it still is not a textured finish. So as you can see, my hands are sweating a little bit and I'm getting gross hand sweat all over the front of it. Isn't that a beautiful sight? And yeah. So on the bottom, we've got our stand, as well as many giant holes. Now you've got a few nipples on the bottom that you can use if you want to set it down like this. It's very heavy. But this doesn't really look that great because the stand is affixed, although I do like the fact that the stand is permanently attached because it means you can't lose it. So I do really like that. On the front, or, the front, we've got our Xbox button, which on my unit is a little bit crooked for some reason, and I'm not saying like this, I'm saying even when it's standing up, it's a little bit crooked. We also have a USB port. I wish there was another one next to it. We've got our sync button, we've got our disk drive, and our eject button. It's worth noting that despite the PS5 and PS4 Pro not being able to play 4K Blu-rays, the Xbox Series X does. In fact, the One X and the One S can also play 4K Blu-rays, which I didn't know until after I bought this. So I don't have any 4K Blu-rays anyways, but it's nice to know that you actually get the better experience watching media on the Xbox and the PlayStation, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but what can you do? So, not only that, but of course you have the backwards compatibility. So, not only can you play the cross-gen games, which work very well, and quick side note, a lot of people saw my video on whenever I first got this, before I had the Series X, when I had the One X, and a lot of people said that it wasn't working on the One X because the game was bad, or because the game was somehow not supported on the Xbox One X, which makes no sense because I know that's not it, because my dad has the fat Xbox One, the original launch Xbox One from 2014, well 13, but you get the idea. And this game works perfectly on his console. He bought himself his own copy and it works just fine. So it's not that. This does work on Xbox One. And one thing I do love about these cross-gen editions is it means that if you can't get a hold of a Series X right now, you can pick up an Xbox One of any kind and still buy all these same games. And then the second you finally get an upgrade, you don't have to swap out your discs. The smart delivery feature on the Series X is one of my favorite features about this console, and it's one of the many reasons why I've chosen to go with Xbox this generation. Which normally I've always been an Xbox fan during the generations. The launch of the Xbox One and the PS4 was the only exception. By the time the One S and the One X came out, I was pretty much back in the Xbox camp. So as far as console gaming goes, I personally feel like the Series X is the way to go this generation, because Sony is doing a lot of weird stuff with anti-consumer just things right now, with the latest example being the God of War edition, where people are buying the collector's edition, and Sony is somehow forgetting to put the disc in with it. And then some people are saying you're supposed to get a code, but they're not getting that either. It's really weird. So that's just one example, and I'm not turning this into a fanboy war because I have plenty of PlayStations and I do like them. I like pretty much every console. But the reason why I chose to go with the Xbox Series X this generation is for, first off, Game Pass, because the other family members in my house love Game Pass, and that alone meant we had to have some sort of Xbox. Number two, the 4K Blu-ray support. Number three, the thing actually fits in my entertainment center, which definitely means a lot. I know there's some rumors of a PS5 Slim coming out next year, but right now that's just vaporware. We don't know what that entails. And if it's as ugly as the original PS5, then that's not good. This thing is actually the exact same width as the Xbox One S and One X. Although it is a little bit wider in practice because of the built-in stand. But again, I like the built-in stand. It's obviously just a lot taller. So if you're going to have it horizontally like this, the biggest problem is going to be having the horizontal space, or the vertical space, if it's horizontal, I should say. And but in my particular entertainment center, I've actually found that turning it up on its side is the way to go. And generally, if you have the option to do both, I would say turn it up on its side like this, because it's clearly designed to sit that way. Because the Xbox emblem, even though you can't really see it, is upright on this. Although again, on mine it's a little bit crooked. And of course, you have the heat vent on the top, so it's able to let all the hot air rise at the top. And I love this little green accent. I wish it was an LED. Like, that'd be so cool if it was an LED that you could, like, turn on and off in the settings, but unfortunately that's not the case. But yeah, even though the Series X, it's very heavy, but the PS5 also is incredibly heavy. And, but you'd expect the Series X to be relatively light, considering that it's not that much bigger, but it's a brick. It's literally the shape, size, and weight of a brick. In fact, it's the weight of several bricks. But yeah, and also you can't really turn it with on while it's on the stand, so you have to kind of pick it up. But that's kind of good because it means it's not going to go anywhere. So yeah, looking at the back, since again I haven't reviewed the Series X first, although obviously if you've had this since launch, then it's not like the I/O is going to change. But hey, just for those who are wondering, you do have your power input, which is a standard two-prong power cable, which is fantastic because it means that if you like to move your console around, or if you have multiple consoles in your setup, you can theoretically have this power cord and an HDMI that you can then swap between your Series X. If you have an Xbox One S or X, you can swap it between that. If you have a PS3 Slim, if you have a PS4, if you have a Model 3 or Model 1 PlayStation 2, so just not the middle SIM with an external power supply, or if you have that, you can plug that cable into the brick. Same with if you have a Sega Saturn, a PS1, a Dreamcast. There's so many systems that use this standard two-prong power cable, and after the various issues that I've had with power bricks on the original Xbox One that I've seen, it's good to have that internal. Although after my 1S power supply died, the internal one, that is one scenario where having an external brick would be easier because it'd be much easier to replace than having to open it up and replace an internal power supply. So there are, of course, advantages and disadvantages to both. I feel like most people are going to prefer having the internal power supply with the universal figure 8 plug. So that is good. So we've got that. We've got Ethernet above it and two USB ports. Then next to it, we have an HDMI out and the expansion card slot for those weird, way overpriced expansion cards that I do not recommend. I'm hearing some people say that some Series X games don't work on a USB external hard drive. I'm not sure if that's the case or not. Thankfully, I've not ran out of space yet, but I've only used a handful of games on the Series X, mainly these ones. So I haven't ran out of space yet. I haven't even checked my storage, but I know the second I run out of space, it's going to be very frustrating. And this has been an ongoing issue since the last decade with the previous generation. The original Xbox One and PS4, given the fact that they require game installs, those hard drives should have been at least 2 terabytes. And given the games are only getting bigger and bigger, frankly, the hard drives or SSDs on these should, at least in a world that made sense, should be like 4 terabytes. But obviously, that would not be feasible financially, so you just have to buy these stupid expansion cards. I really hate that. That's one of my least favorite parts about this generation. It's the fact that you can spend however much money on a game and they don't even actually use the disc anymore. It's one thing whenever they fill up the disc and there's still space left first off, if that's the case, put it on 2 discs, but I at least understand that. But in the case of Modern Warfare 2, there's only 73 megabytes that it's on the disc, which is literally basically just the CD unlock code. There is no data on this disc. You have to install everything. I even went, after I installed it, several days later, I went to play the campaign after playing multiplayer, and it wasn't downloaded. Why it didn't download off the gate when I was downloading the multiplayer and the rest of it, I don't know. But for whatever reason, it didn't, so I couldn't play it. I had to wait all night to play it the next day, even though it was only 30 gigs, and my internet and my console are very fast. And I know that's not that because when I was installing the multiplayer, it was like 130 gigs, and that went way faster. So, one thing I will say is that if you have fiber networking like I do, and you have the Xbox Series X Etherneted into your router like I do, the actual download speeds are really good. And that is the one scenario where I can understand downloading stuff from the network versus off the disk. Although I would much rather there be a software update that gives you the option to choose, hey, do you want to download this game from the disc onto your console, or do you want to download it from the network where it'll use some of your bandwidth, but it will go faster? I'd like to see that option. That'd be a little bit of nice future proofing, but it's clear they're never going to do that because with games like Modern Warfare 2, they're trying to go in the opposite direction and make physical media useless. But I'm definitely going to go down with the ship, so to speak. I am always a physical media guy. That's why I never considered the Xbox Series X or Series S. And yeah, if you're like me and you prefer physical media, which based on my audience it seems is not the case, unfortunately, then yeah, the Series S is not even a considerable for you. That's not a word, but you know what I mean. It's not something you'd consider. So that's why a lot of people have been telling me, oh, just get a Series S. Just return your One X and get a Series S. No, I'm not going to get a Series S because I have all these games and none of them will work on the console. And I'm not going to spend $60, $70 on a game that I don't actually own. I do not spend $70 on a piece of media just for the company to be able to rip it down off its servers whenever it wants and then run out the back door with all my money. That's unacceptable. And nobody in this industry should accept that, especially not on face value and as brazen as it has been. It's really frustrating, but that's a separate video that I'll make at a later date. I just want to comment on that because some people are saying, this is useless, just get a Series S. You will never see a Series S on this channel because I do not support digital media, and I already have plenty of physical games, so why would I make these useless? Doesn't make any sense. So, now that we've got that little tirade out of the way, what's the UI and the experience like on the Series X? Well, if you used an Xbox One in the past few years, that's it. That's all there is to it. The UI is exactly the same as it is on the One S and the One X and the original Xbox One at this point, since they've obviously all been updated. So the UI is not any different, which has its pluses and minuses. The negative is that it doesn't really feel like a new system. It just feels like another evolution of the Xbox One. It feels like the Xbox One XX instead of the Xbox Series X. But the advantage is that it's very familiar. You know where everything is, assuming you got used to the previous UI, which is still a little wonky. I'm not the biggest fan of the Xbox One UI, but they have at least made efforts to improve it, and it's a lot more customizable than it used to be. So I do like that. I can at least put stuff closer to where I want it to be versus it not being anywhere close to where I want it to be. So there are advantages there. And I'm looking forward to the next evolution of the dashboard, which is rumored to come out next year. Hopefully that will address some of the complaints that I have with the current dashboard, and hopefully that will take care of it. So hopefully I won't need to say too much about that. So if you're used to the Xbox dashboard for the Xbox One and all those systems of the last couple years, then you'll feel right at home with the Series X. There will be no learning curve. You'll just instantly have everything there. Not to mention the fact that you don't have to buy Game Pass separately for your different consoles. If you buy Game Pass, it works on all your Xbox One or Series consoles. Although one thing that's frustrating is Xbox Live Gold is not the same way. Xbox Live Gold comes with Game Pass, or at least it did, but apparently they got rid of that. And now when I pay for Game Pass, I don't have access to Xbox Live, at least not on my 360. which I know some people will be like, why would you play on your 360? Well, the reason why is because some games, like, for example, my favorite game, Grand Theft Auto 4, the online doesn't work on the Series X. It's a really bad bug. Rockstar has refused to fix it, and I can only assume they've refused to fix it because they probably want you to buy GTA 5 and play that much crappier online version and dump GTA 4, but I'm not a fan of that. I prefer playing GTA 4 online. I like the party modes a lot better. It's just a lot better of an online experience, at least for me. And the 360 version is still online because it's just reliant on the 360 servers, but they have never patched it to work on the Xbox Series X. So even though Xbox Live is separate on my 360 and on my Xbox One, even though I bought it, even though I bought both Game Pass and I bought Xbox Live for both my Xbox One and my Xbox 360, jeez, I just kicked the tripod, specifically so I can play this, it works on the 360 online, so it's not my Xbox Live, but it doesn't work on the Xbox Series X. And that just covers certain games because Modern Warfare works, and of course Xbox One Call of Duties still work. So there's this weird bug with the backwards compatibility where a lot of games just don't work online, even if you pay for Xbox Live and pay for Game Pass. It's very frustrating. And I can't say much about Game Pass in particular because, again, I'm not the one in my household who primarily uses it, but it is a really good service. As someone who prefers physical media, my preferred way of using Game Pass is to check out every game that comes out on it. And if it's a game that I really like and they have a digital version or they have a physical release of it, then I'll go buy the physical copy. It's fantastic because it means that I can try the game out in its entirety. And then if I decide, yes, I want to experience this multiple times over, I want to own this, I can go and pick up a physical copy. It's fantastic. And I really like Game Pass for that reason. And that's the biggest thing that again, it's another great reason to pick an Xbox this generation, at least as of right now. So, with that in mind, how are the graphics? How's the gameplay? Because I don't have a 4K TV right now. My 4K TV broke literally 2 days before I bought this. So I've been using this on a 1080p TV, and not a very big one at that. So I will be getting a 4K TV soon, but how's the experience of the Xbox Series X on a 1080p TV? Well, I'll do a separate video on that, but I'll touch on it briefly. It's really good. The downsampling and everything that it does works very well, and even though my TV obviously does not support 4K, I do really like the way it looks on a 1080p TV. And don't think that because you have a 1080p TV that you can't get enjoyment out of this generation or that you have to buy a Series S because you're wasting money on the X. That's not true. Modern Warfare 2, for example, even on a 1080p TV, looks really good. The graphics on this game look really good, and the resolution, the frame rate, it's all really good. The game was really smooth. I didn't notice any real issues with frame rate, but I don't have the most sensitive frame rate eyes, I guess you could say. So I'm probably not the best authority to talk about frame dips and all that, but I didn't notice anything like that while playing Modern Warfare 2. So, in fact, a lot of other games that have had frame dip issues in the past, notably Grand Theft Auto 4, when you play this on the 360, there's a lot of frame skip whenever there's a lot of explosions going on. The Series X just smooths that out, and it runs very smooth. I don't know if it's 60 FPS per se, but it looks like it. It definitely could fool me to be that. It's very smooth. And the upgrades for your old games and for the new games are really good on the Series X. I honestly don't feel, at least in the case of GTA 4, as an example, I actually feel like the jump from the One X over the One was actually felt bigger to me than going from the One X to the Series X. But remember, I was using the One X on a 4K TV, and then I was using the Series X on a 1080p TV. So that very well could be why it looked the same to me. So I won't comment too much on that until I actually get a proper 4K TV, and then I'll see if that is significantly better. But I can say with confidence that there's no reason to pick up a Series S over a Series X. I know if money is a problem, then I understand that. But to me, if you're going to invest in the next generation, do it right. Don't do this half step, because if you're going to do that, just pick up an Xbox One X at that point. At least in my opinion, that's what I would do. That's obviously what I did, but mine obviously had a faulty disk drive, so I had to take it back. And like I mentioned before, I would never consider the Series S because of it doesn't allow physical media. So I'm sure there's some other people that are in that boat. So the thing that I love about the Xbox generation is that yes, well, if you buy PS4 titles, they'll work on your PS5. Because of smart delivery, you can buy all your Series X and cross gen games right now, even if you only have an Xbox One, and you can buy them with confidence because the second that you are able to get to pick up a Series X, everything just looks better. You don't have to buy anything new. All your old controllers, all your old games, everything works, and I just love that. It's almost like you were designed to. Adam Korlick touched on this in his Series X review. It feels like you're just designed to take your 1S or your 1X or your 1 and just unplug it, put this where it was, plug it in, assuming it fits in the space, plug it in, and just use everything you already used. And then just have the advantage of better graphics, a faster console with a more future-proof design. And that's really all it is. You know, if you have an Xbox One and you bought a Series X, unless you specifically play the Kinect games, which nobody does, then you can play everything you can play on your Xbox One on your Series X. It's one thing in terms of like 360 games because not every 360 or original Xbox game works on the backwards compatibility. A lot of them do, but not all of them. So if you have a very big, robust 360 and Xbox original collection, then it makes sense to keep those consoles hooked up. But the Xbox One, not so much. So if you're like me, then you probably will have an original Xbox, a 360, and a Series X hooked up, and that will cover all of your Xbox games because, you know, backwards compatibility, it's not going to be perfect. And even with the Activision merger going through, which I'm not in support of by any stretch of the imagination, monopolies are not good, but at least the one bright side is that you'll have more compatibility with stuff through backwards compatibility and Game Pass and all that. So that is pretty much that. There isn't much else to say, to be honest, about the Series X. It's just kind of there. It's an updated Xbox. It has its own feel, kind of, but it also is very much piggybacking off of the previous generation, particularly the One X. And yeah, if you're able to get your hands on one, then it's a great investment, at least in my opinion. But at the end of the day, you don't have to get into this yet. I know there's a lot of people that commented on my 1X review saying, that's a piece of crap, take that back, get a Series S. If you don't want a Series S, don't get a Series S. The only game I'm aware of that doesn't support the Xbox One at this point, physically, is Microsoft Flight Simulator, which a lot of people don't care about. I want to get that game personally, since I have a Series X and I want to experience it, but hey, that is your prerogative. So that is one thing that's really nice, is that you are not at all required to jump into the generation yet. If you want to hold on to your Xbox One for a bit longer, then do it. Or if you had PS4 last generation, pick up an Xbox Series X, get something a bit different, or vice versa. If you had an Xbox One last generation and you don't necessarily care about your old stuff working, you're going to sell it off to go towards your new experience anyways, then pick up a PS5, get something different. But you know, for me personally, the Series X is my choice over the PlayStation 5. It will be what I play games on. After all, I don't have a PS5 anymore anyways. So that is pretty much that. And I'm sorry this review isn't going to cover much else because there just isn't much else to talk about. You know, it very much stays the course. And the biggest story with the Series X is backwards compatibility, Game Pass, and of course, it being a new generation of hardware. So, and of course, the same problems with console storage and updates and downloads that have plagued the 8th generation that the industry refuses to fix because it's much more profitable to get you to buy digital, where they can then take away everything that you bought and then you own nothing because you'll own nothing and you'll be happy about it. So, but again, that's a separate rant. This is Intellitech Mobile signing out with my full in-depth review of the Xbox Series X after 2 years, and more so after 2 months of me owning it. So I like it. If you can get one of these for a deal, I don't think $500 is an acceptable price for any new console, but that's just me. So if you can get a Black Friday or a holiday deal on this, if you can get it for like $400, go for it. And if you're trying to decide between this and a PS5, I mean, I've told you my perspective. I personally will go with the Xbox this generation, but more people are going with PS5, although it's a lot closer than you'd think. And that's pretty much that. So, this is Intellitech Mobile signing out. Let me know your thoughts on the Series X if you have one, and your thoughts in general in the comments below. Let me know what you want to see next on this channel. I know I've gotten some requests for some other 360 models. I'll do those at some point. And that is that. This is Intellitech Mobile signing out, and I hope you all have a good one. Peace. And again, if there's anything that I forgot to cover that you wanted to hear me talk about specifically, because I have a very bad memory and I forget a lot of stuff, and I tend to ramble a lot, then feel free to drop anything in the comments below, and I'll happily answer your questions.